G'day guys, you're back with MiracleMAX. For those of you who are eagle-eyed, you can probably see that I'm not in the electronics lab. In fact, I'm in the lounge room. Don't tell Mrs. Miracle.
I hate it.
Yeah, she found out. Anyway, we've got an LG TV that has an issue after about 20 minutes. Picture just disappears, the sound keeps going. What's wrong with it? I don't know. Let's check it out together. So this LG will work perfectly for up to about 20 minutes and then the picture will just disappear, the screen will go black, but the sound continues. Is that a bit of a clue for us? Anyway, what model is this LG and what are the possible problems with it? For those of you who are interested, the model is a 55LM6200. Now that's a 55-inch TV. That mightn't seem big in standards nowadays, but you try lugging this thing from the electronics lab into the lounge room by yourself, trying to get away with it without Mrs. Miracle seeing. It's a hard thing to do. I managed to find a service manual online that I'll put in the description below. The good thing about that is that it gave me the position of the screws, the size of the screws and where they are located, what they look like even. But unfortunately the problem was that the customer has already had a shot at it and he admitted that he put the screws in the wrong position. I'll have to start from square one, but that's not an issue because I have the description within the service manual. So let's get this back off and then we'll fire this thing up, run it for 20 minutes and see what it does. Just before I turn it on and run it for that 20 minutes, I've got the back off. As you can see, I'm going to run through some of the main components. We have our power supply over here. We've got our hot side and our cold side, or our high voltage and our low voltage. Over here we have our main board or our processor board. Down here we have what's called the T-Con board. That's the guy that's responsible for the actual picture. And up the top here we have the output to our LED backlight screen. You can see those connectors there. So I've got it up and running. You can clearly see that it's got good picture, good sound attached to it, and of course good quality videos right there. We'll let it run for about 20 minutes and see if it blacks out. Then we'll do some more diagnosis. While it's operating correctly, I'm just on the back of the TV, as you can see. Notice all these little white dots, they're lights. That's the backlight for the TV. They're LEDs. There's strips across there, and these are operating right now. That's what I suspect. I could be wrong, of course, but just keep an eye on that for when it actually fails, the backlight. All right, it's finally failed. It's taken a while, of course. You can see that we have a black screen. And if we look over the back, that's the laptop that I've got hooked up. It's happily working away. And of course, we can hear the sound continuing. So we're on the back now, and you can clearly see that those backlights, the little guys that were there before, are now gone. There's one other way that you can double check to make sure that it's a backlight. I've got a torch on there now and you can clearly see that there's some sort of background stuff happening there. There's my hand being moved, etc, etc. So that's evidence that we are searching for a backlight issue. Let's check all the components while the components are still hot. So now we've got to be safe. We have some main filter caps, that's those big guys right there, and they can hold their voltage for a long time. I've been bitten by them before and it doesn't really tickle. So we need to check that voltage and then get that voltage to dissipate by using a safe method. So that looks all right. We've only got about 8.6 volts on one cap. And of course, they're probably in parallel, I assume. And on that second cap, we have, drum roll, around about 8 volts. So I'm happy that I can safely pull that apart now. One last thing I've noticed is that there is actually a fault code displayed with this little LED. Let's count them, Jim. 1, 2, 3, 4. Space. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll look up and see what number 4 means. That might give us some direction. So looking at our service manual here on page 48, you can see that it says error code number 4. That flashed 4 times with our LED. We can see that the LED driver is not working correctly. We've checked our backlight with the naked eye. We've seen that it's clearly not working. So we need to check our B positive 12 volts next. Now that we've confirmed our customer's complaint, it's time to try and isolate the fault. How can I do that? Well, it's intermittent, that's the problem. I have to wait for a certain amount of time before it plays up, then do some testing. So what I'm going to do is do some testing first, check out voltages, etc. while it's operational, write all that information down, and then wait for it to play up. Look, it could be temperature related. I've got a hot air gun that I can wave over the place to see if I can encourage the fault to happen quickly. I've also got a thermal camera. I might be able to see a certain area that's, drawing more current than normal, excessive heat being produced. I'm going to try and isolate this thing, but it may take some time. So let's get started. I've got the TV up and running, as you can see. I've been doing some testing out the back with all different voltages, and there's a bit of a chart, a bit dark here, but a bit of a chart there of the voltages that I've managed to record at the moment. So when it drops out, I'll see what voltages are missing. There might be a rail that's missing that causes the issue. I've also been using my thermal camera to see if there's anything that stands out as obvious, but so far about the hottest I've got is about 50 to 60 degrees, which is well within range of most of these little ICs. So nothing is standing out as yet, and the telly's still working. I might encourage it with a heat gun, give that a shot, hey? As I said before, I've made up a chart of all the voltages that should be there when it was working, or that were there when it was working. Now it's not, our backlight has disappeared. So let's do some extra testing, and I think we'll be a little bit surprised as to what we find. So I'm gonna, don't know if you guys can see it, but I'm just gonna short this, or this is the ground of course. I'm gonna put this to the chassis. There's a nice little point over here just off camera, and let's do some testing. So according to my sheet, we should have 74, 17, 17 and 12 up the top here, and we have zip, oh, 0.2 of a volt there by the looks of things. We've got some dodgy looking thing happening there, and it's almost like AC coming through, isn't it? That's interesting. Let's turn that to AC and see what it does. See if it stabilises. It does stabilise. It's getting AC through, isn't it? Okay, certainly shouldn't be AC coming through there. And this one here for our LED should be 74. We have Zipoid, okay. So while I've been doing some testing off camera, I also managed to find this particular document, which is very, very helpful. It has some voltages with regard to our switch mode power supply, or our power supply, and also down here how we can actually switch the thing on without having the main board attached to it. I'll zoom in on that so we can have a look. To try and isolate the fault, I'm going to power up the power supply all by itself without a command from the main board. And we can do that here. That was in that document that I just showed you. All we have to do to get the power supply up and running, we can do the power on is pin number 1, and we can shoot it through to either pin number 9, 10, 11 or 12. And to get our backlight on, we can go from pin 12 to pin 18. And that will bring on the backlight as well. So we can power up the power supply itself and bring on the backlight as well. Now what's the advantage of that? Well, the thing is, if I power it up independent from the main board and it fails, then obviously it's within the power supply itself. But if it continues to stay on, then it might be an actual command from the main board. So that'll help isolate the fault. Look, it's super important to make sure that you have a sign up somewhere that states that it is powered on, even just to remind yourself. It can be easy to forget on occasion that something's powered up and you can end up in trouble. So I physically put a sign up, and if I have the power disconnected, I always have the cord hanging over the top like that so that I can physically see the condition of the TV, whether it's turned on or off. So for convenience, what I've done is I've hooked up number 1 and number 9 just for room, and then I've gone from number 12 up to number 18 to bring on my backlight. You can see I've got my main board disconnected and I've just powered them up, both the power supply as well as the backlight. You can see that I've still got my LED connectors hooked up, so I'll be able to see the little lights coming through the back. Then we can see if it cuts in and out. Let's just see if we can power up this thing. All right, got our backlights up and running. You can see them there. We'll give it 20 minutes or so and see if they cut out. Okay, that's approximately 15 minutes, and as you can see, the backlights are out. Yay! but it's still powered up. You should be able to see the flashing LED over here indicating that, yes, we've got an issue. Of course, we haven't got the main board hooked up. I've done heaps of testing on this TV and I'm like in two minds as to where to go next. The power seems to indicate that it's working, even to the backlights. It appears to be working. Remember when I made up this sheet of all the voltages when it was actually working properly to compare it when it was failing, and I'm getting some divided results. There appears to still be constant voltage at my backlight. That would indicate that my drivers are okay. So perhaps not leaning towards a power supply problem. I thought to myself also that perhaps the power supply wouldn't fail if it didn't have a load attached to it. That's why I left the backlight attached to it while I powered up. Through research and experience, I've only ever seen backlights fail after startup or shortly after startup. I've never seen it within 20 minutes. However, I decided to contact Justine Yong. He's a guy over in Malaysia that I write articles for his electronic website. He stated that he has seen backlights fail 20 minutes or even longer. He suggested that I use a proper LED tester. This one here is a HWL300. I don't know, I just got it off of eBay, something along those lines. They're all very similar. Reviews are quite good on this particular one. What's the advantage of this tester? Well, it can test up to 300 volts, limiting the current as necessary. The beauty is you don't even have to adjust the thing. It will figure out the voltage as well as the current for itself. Justine indicated that I could hook this up and leave it for 20 minutes if necessary, and then look and see if there was any backlights that were gone or a single LED gone, whatever the case may be. So that's what I'm about to do now. And of course, you don't need the unit powered up. This is a power supply all by itself. The instructions tell you that you shouldn't get a shock from this bad boy because it's double insulated both on the hot side and the cold side. If we turn it on, it should search for its own voltage, which it is doing. It's doing 107, which seems a little bit high. The LEDs certainly aren't on all that bright, but we're going to leave it on for a certain period of time, put all the other lights out and just see if we can find the backlights or any of the backlights that fail. While it's a little bit hard to see, the backlight is definitely on there, you can see that. So I'll leave it on for 15-20 minutes and hopefully I'll be able to see some of the backlights have failed. Otherwise we've got to strip the entire TV down and that's quite a big job. So I've had to try a different method. I've powered it up again according to the bypass method, and I'm just looking at it. I couldn't get it to work properly with that tester because it wouldn't power it up with enough current going through it, so I've just bypassed it. So hopefully what I can do now, even though I can't get my camera to focus properly, we'll just look for a dark spot before it gives up the ghost. So we'll just keep recording until we can see something actually happen. Well, there was no warning whatsoever, was there, guys? It just went out. Now keep in mind, if those LEDs are in series, you take out one, like your typical old Christmas light trees, you take out one, they all go out. That's what I'm thinking has happened here. Let's do some testing of voltages at the back before we call it. But the thing is, look guys, I've got my 70 something volts there. What I might do is just hook on my ground wire there and check my 70 there, because that will tell me, yep, I've got 70 there. There's no doubt about that. So, oh look, this is a tough call. I'm leaning towards the LEDs themselves at this point. According to this wiring diagram here, we should have a signal on the oscilloscope to turn it off and on, but unfortunately I don't have a mobile oscilloscope with me at present. It says here to turn up the brightness, make sure that you've got your 73 volts at TP 210, which is this guy over here, which I have confirmed that there is round about there somewhere. Okay, so I've got my 73 volts there, no problems. And what you're meant to do is chuck a resistor between, a 220 ohm resistor between any of the block grounding pins or any of these ones here, which is included on this connector here, the P203 or the P202. So these little pins dangling down here, really hard to get on. So what I've done is pull the board off, solder a little extension wire on then so I can short them out with that 220 ohm resistor attached to it. And what it does is bring on each individual block, okay? So it looks like we've got 12 blocks there overall, and I've been able to do that successfully. But it's interesting, remember it cut out before, but now for some reason I've got it back, but I'll show you the reason that I've got it back. So notice here, as I said before, I've soldered on the back of one of these blocking ones. What it's meant to do is it's meant to bring on a pulse width modulated signal, 50% duty cycle. But I've checked with my little oscilloscope, this little handheld one, and I'm still not getting a signal, but I can bypass it to get the LEDs up and running. So simply by shorting out one of these pins together with your 73 volts, you end up with a backlight block lit up, which we can see down the bottom here. There's a block that's been lit up, and the interesting thing is that obviously the driver or something is not taking control, because if I remove this pin here, then let's get that off. Watch this down here. I'll get rid of this light first, just to make it a little bit easier for you guys. Now if I get rid of that block, or that shorting wire, they go out. So clearly it's not being driven by the power supply there. If I put it back on, my block comes back on there. However, if I just power it up as per normal, we get no lights coming on. Oh, they'll come on for a fraction, they'll die down and then disappear. See, they just disappeared straight away. So obviously it's not the fact that the backlights can't work, it's the fact that the driver is not supplying that regulated signal, that pulse width modulated signal there that we're expecting to bring on the brightness, you know, half brightness or full brightness, etc. Because I can bypass it with this little wire here. I can get that up and running, so every time I short that out, that block downstairs should come on. See that? They're back on again, and they'll stay on permanently, they won't go off. So I've got my little oscilloscope hooked up here, and the pattern that we're looking for is this guy here, which is a 50% duty cycle. Peak to peak is about 26 volts at the rate of 2.5 milliseconds. So I've kind of set my oscilloscope up like that, and I'm just about to power up the unit. See, we're getting a signal here, which is correct, and our backlights are on, and it just disappeared, and so did our backlights. I've just turned down the lights there so that you guys can see it. I've got my 220 ohm resistor in line here. I've put an external earth onto my circuit board over there. And of course, when we power it up, the LED driver should kick in and we should get that 50% duty cycle that we expect. But I've also earthed that 220 ohm resistor, so that should actually bypass it. Let's have a look at the signal. Here we go. We've got our signal, all our backlights are on, as you can see. Let's just wait for half. Oh, they disappeared. Or did they? In actual fact, they are still on. If, what I'll do is show you, bear with, there we go, there's our little lights. Now they're certainly not as bright as they were before, because this is a single block, keep in mind. I'm getting no signal off my LED driver, as you can see there. She's a flat line, but I've been able to bypass the LEDs and get them to work. So to me, this seems to be an LED driver issue. What do you think? Look, I've spent quite a bit of time testing off camera, and yeah, it's not a 5-second job, this guy here. He's causing me a little bit of scratching of the brain, a few sleepless nights. Now, just to inform you, this little guy over here is the LED driver, and I'll show you a bit of information about him. Now, I can't readily find information about it, but these LEDs are connected in series. That means if one's out, they're all gone, okay? And it's we can program it, or it is programmed by using an external resistor. Keep that in mind. We can use that as a testing method as well. It also states down here that feedback is given to the voltage regulator via current or voltage, and we're looking at the range somewhere between 10 volts and 28 volts. Now, I haven't been able to find a voltage output table for this particular driver here. Needless to say, when it's been working, I've been doing some testing around that particular driver. I'm going to power it up now, and we should be able to see some lights come on in the background, I'm hoping. Yes, there are lights up here. Now, if we do some testing, particularly at there's a 5 volt power supply right here. It should give me 5 volts for, is that 420 something? 421, okay. Now, while the lights are still working, the LEDs, I'm just going to disconnect that now. And all you have to do, keep in mind that these lights are in series. So if all I'm going to do is disconnect one of those connectors going onto my LEDs, and notice what that voltage is now. This confused me a little bit to start with, and we now have 2.5 volts, so we've got roughly half. And of course, it makes no difference if I disconnect this other guy over here. It's just the feedback circuit doing its job. I've now disconnected my power supply. This confused me for a little while because when the LEDs went out, I thought, oh, well, this chip has failed because it's now dropped down to 2.5 volts, and I started tracing back this way. But I'm now thinking that perhaps it is as a result of the feedback circuit. It's saying, hey, one of your LEDs is out, mate, and I'm now going to stop supplying voltage to the entire TV. That's my thinking. So now I'm going to do some block testing on each one of these little blocks here, and I'll have to solder in some new ones and then turn the TV upright so we can see what lights are working and what lights are not working at a given time. You're probably looking at this mess here and you're going, Max, what are you doing? What on earth is this multicoloured spaghetti that's on steroids? Let me explain. Remember that 220 ohm resistor that I talked about, having to activate the block test to do the LEDs up the front? Now I've got the TV vertical, as you can see, and I've had to stick on some cardboard to make sure it's safe. All the 220 ohm resistors are tucked away in behind this heat shrink. Okay, so there are 6 blocks on each section of these wires here. As an example, there's the black plug P202, and it shows you here that the block, or one of the blocks, is pin number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This one here is not connected, and the other one is that all-important 73 volts, which I have labelled with a plus over here, and the one that's not being used is tucked away. Whereabouts is it? Yeah, that guy there, that's not connected at all, that little bloke there. The red one's just stuck in the side there. So I have 6 connectors here and 6 connectors here with 220 ohm resistors built inside, so they're ready to go, and I'm going to connect these lot to a grounding bus bar, if you will. I'll show you what I mean. So once this thing fails, I'll be able to connect all these guys up to this earthing bar that I've made up here. It's all cardboard suspended, as you can see. It's cardboard aided design, so it's CAD design, and I've got this going off to earth, or the chassis itself. So once this thing fails, then I can do that bypass or that block test, and I've done it this way instead of doing it individually, because if I do one block, another block, another block, another block 12 times, and it might actually start working again. I want to set it up all at once so that when the LEDs on the front fail, then I can do my block test all at once, and hopefully I should be able to see a block, or at least an LED or a dark patch there that has failed. So how do you like your multicoloured spaghetti cooked? Al dente, of course. Bellissimo! And your time starts now. Okay, backlights are on. Yeah, it's a waiting game now. All right, the backlights have finally failed after about, 15-20 minutes as normal. So now I've hooked up all of these onto my little bus bar, which has got an earth attached to it. That goes off to my chassis downstairs here. This will be pulled down to ground, so it should give us full brightness and therefore stress out these LEDs even further. We should be able to see which ones failed. I'm going to do this in the dark, obviously, to try and isolate where that one is missing, or whichever block is missing. So let's give that a whirl. Unfortunately, I can't see anything that has totally failed there. I might have to have a closer look for just one. So when it's powered up, what I'm going to be doing is removing each one of these little clips and seeing which row of lights, or block of lights they call it, disappear, and what's the intensity of them. So we're now powered up there, as you can see. Let me see if I can show you. I think it's across the top there, guys. Can you see that? Now, it doesn't seem to be overly bright, to be quite honest. I can't see what you're seeing. I'll go to the next block, and I'm not sure where that is, but that should be flashing to you guys. Right, you can see that down the bottom there. I can see it from here. So the bottom, what's that, left to you, I think it is. Now they're quite bright, I can see that. So that gives you an idea of the testing that I've been doing. Each individual one, so there's what, 12 overall. I've been pulling them off and on, but I'll be honest, it's too diffused to actually see. It's really, really hard to determine if there is an LED dead in there, because what happens is the main board or the power supply will go into a protect mode and it'll shut down the backlights. We're just bypassing that at the moment, of course. So while I'm happy with the testing procedure that I've carried out, I really don't find that it's definitive. I'm not happy that there isn't an LED out. In fact, I'm sure that there is an LED out that's causing the system to shut down. But the only way to find out if there is an LED or a weak LED is to pull the front off the TV, not a 5-second job. I've been a busy boy. Look, the TV is sitting on our dining room table, our kitchen table. So Mrs. Miracle is not overly happy with the concept, so I better hook into it and get it done. You can see that I've removed the actual screen. I've pulled all the surrounds off, and the plastic surround simply clips off in place. It's got these little locking tabs. The metal surrounds are held in by screws. I've got all those off and put aside. Underneath that quilt cover, I've got a big piece of cardboard, big chunky piece to hide the screen on. The screen was actually quite solid. I read that it was quite flimsy and easy to break, but I lifted it up by myself and put it aside. There was no problems. You can see where the ribbon cable is connected onto the circuit board here, which then goes onto the T-con. So you've got to be careful with that. It's fairly delicate, but that's the progress so far. So getting access to these LEDs is a bit of a problem. It's quite a large job. Now these LEDs are a little bit different in construction because I naturally thought that we would have a series of LEDs across there, LED strips, which is the case in a lot of TVs, but these use a very thick diffuser, and they have one set of LEDs along here and another set of LEDs along the other side, and it comes in sideways through the diffuser. That's why it was so hard to try and see if there was an individual LED out. So now that I've got it all off, there's nothing along the bottom there, it's only on the two sides. Now when it goes out, I should be able to power it up individually, and I should be able to see which, hopefully, LED is out. I've now got it powered up on the table again, as you can see, without any diffusers, so it should be a lot easier to see if there's any LEDs out. At the moment they are mega bright. Let's go over the other side. Mega bright as well. They all appear to be working, so we'll give it that 20-minute window and start doing some extra testing. This was the last one that I powered up, and I was starting to question my testing techniques, whether I was doing it right. Oh, look, I had no idea, just about to rip my hair out. But the last one, of course, is always the one that gives you the answer. See that little LED? He's out. He's not very happy at all. Right in the centre there. So that LED is faulty. I'm hoping that that's the reason behind it. So those edge strips have finally turned up through the post, or freight I should say. And I've highlighted the guy that's crook. That's this guy right here. I've marked with a marker. And so these are just held on by double-sided tape. So I've got to peel these old guys off, disconnect my connector of course carefully, and then peel this off and put in another set in. And hopefully that sorted our issue. Just be aware before you stick the new ones down that there is a left and a right hand side. You can see here the connector here is at the bottom of the strip, whereas this guy over here is at the top of the strip. So make sure you do them correctly. I'm just doing one side at a time so I can compare the other side in case I screw up. Also, before I remove the old strip, I just put a mark where the end of it was so I can make sure that I put the new one in the same place. Alrighty, she's up and running. I've got it powered up at the moment, as you can see, flipped on the dining room table, and I've got the lights there. So look, I'm going to go and have my lunch now, and we're just going to keep an eye on that. I'll put a timer on and, you know, maybe allow an hour. If it doesn't go out by then, I'll call that a fix and put it back together. I'll be honest with you guys, this repair took me heaps longer than I thought it would. I even went and purchased one of these super LED testers. This one here is a HWL300, as you can see there. But in actual fact, that didn't help me at all. It sort of confused me, to be quite honest, because I thought that that would provide the answer straight away, but no. It wasn't like that whatsoever. You can see here I've marked the crook one now that it's off, and I'll work back toward that one, and let's see if we can find the faulty one. All right, so I've just worked back toward that. That should light up. There we go. We've got a nice bright LED. Can you guys see that? Yes, you can. Good. All right, coming back this way. This guy here, that's lighting up. And this is the faulty one, of course, so that clearly won't work. Hello? It's working. What a pain in the neck. You know, this was really hard to find, and yet it's only after that 20-minute interval that this guy will actually play up. And if we continue on, of course, they continue to work. So it was one little tiny LED that was faulty, and it was only after that 20 minutes that this particular guy would play up. What a pain in the neck. That's why it was so hard to find. 2 hours have passed since I fired up this TV. All the LED backlights appear to be working okay, so I now feel confident to put the thing back together and retest it once it's complete and then hand it back to the customer. This TV has taken quite some time to repair. The reason being is because it only gave me a short window to try and figure out what was right and what was wrong. It would take 20 minutes, then it would shut down. It went into a protection mode, so as soon as the backlight failed at any shape or form, then it shut down the entire backlight system. Being able to isolate those blocks was a great diagnostic path. And eventually, what did we find? A single LED that had failed. Then it shut down the backlight. Anyway, it's all sorted now. I've had this thing running for well over 8 hours today, and it's still going strong. I hope you've got something from this video today, guys, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and feel free to comment down below. Of course, don't forget about that notification bell. You don't want to miss any future videos. Of course, you can catch up with us on Instagram as well as Facebook, see what's happening in the lab as well as the workshop. So I look forward to catching up with you guys on a later video, but in the meantime, this is MiracleMAX signing off. I will catch you later. So I don't just have one big container that I throw the screws into. I'll put them into little don't electrocute yourself. Okay, I feel pretty confident about that diagnosis. So it can't be the main board because it's not even connected.
Charging.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I've now got it powered up. Quite budgy. Now all we have to do is to watch patiently as some clown walks in front of the camera. Time to hook it up. No, I'll do that later.